After that, I'd like to quickly discuss Why Media Foreign Policy Report. At Why Media Foreign Policy Report, I know there is one issue that is being discussed right across the globe, and that is the conflict that's happening between Iran, US and Israel. Of course, the major conflict, as we all see, is happening between Iran, US and Israel, but on a wider scale, because Iran has retaliated back. As much as Israel and US, when they combine their forces together, it's a very, very formidable force. And they have all sorts of fighter jets, they have all the arsenal with them. But then here is Iran. As much as they've had some very heavy losses, first things first, their leadership, that has been targeted, and there are a lot of important areas that have been targeted. If we go by what the US President Donald Trump is saying, for now, he wants complete surrender from Iran. Other than that, this war will carry on, and US and Israel, they're pretty much prepared for this war to carry on for weeks or probably even months for that matter. Iran, for now, they have said no, they're not going to surrender. As a matter of fact, Iran has retaliated, and they may not be able to target US, but they're definitely targeting many areas in the Gulf, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, Dubai has also been targeted, and many other areas they've targeted. Not only that, I'll talk about there are a lot of economic impacts also. We'll talk about the economic impacts as well, but there are political implications. Other than political implications, there are definitely implications, or we've seen the economic challenges, whether it's a stock market, oil prices, and the movement of goods. There are a lot of areas of concern in that area. There are, of course, there's a human aspect as well. There are human casualties. People are getting displaced. And not only in Iran or other areas in Gulf, you go to Pakistan for that matter, the impact is definitely felt in India as well. But let's start one by one. Let's start talking who is on which side. If you thought this war is only being fought between Iran on one side and Israel on US on the other side, I doubt so. Even during the Operation Sindoor from Indian side, or the conflict that happened between India and Pakistan, it was not merely the conflict between India and Pakistan. China, on its part, supplied military hardware to Pakistan, and then there was Russia who supplied military hardware to India. So the conflict was not merely between India and Pakistan, but Turkey did its own part, Israel did its own part, and so did China and Russia. US was also closely monitoring the conflict between India and Pakistan. So in the interest of time, I'll not discuss that. We've already discussed that a lot. Let's focus on the conflict at hand. In this area as well, I would say Russia and Iran, they've had close ties. During the Russia and Ukraine war, Iran supplied military hardware, especially drones, to Russia. And in this case, I think it's the opposite now. So what's Russia's main role here? Russia is giving the military intelligence, because as far as military intelligence is concerned, Russia is definitely in the top 3, if not the number 1, definitely top 3 or top 5. So Russia has strong military intelligence, so providing logistical support. There is a reason that Iran has been able to target many areas with precision. So Iran might have its own capabilities, its own intelligence, but a support by Russia seems pretty likely. China, on its part, is supplying military hardware, and let me tell you that if Iran exported its oil, there are many countries, including India, also bought a lot of oil from Iran. But I think after 2023, it was very minimal. But the largest buyer was definitely China. China is heavily invested in Iran. And there was a time when China did mediate a truce between Iran and Saudi Arabia. But we all knew, at least I definitely knew, it won't last, because the countries over there, they might say that yes, the Arabic Alliance or the Muslim Alliance or Organization for Islamic Countries, we've seen all those alliances. But at the end of the day, every single country has its own aspirations. They all want to be the leader, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE. We've seen, the conflicts play out in open between Saudi Arabia and UAE, Qatar and Saudi Arabia. We all know that. And here comes Turkey, asserting its part, and Turkey wants to be the leader of the Muslim world. So the rivalries have already played out in open. And here is US. US always wants to make sure that yes, the rivalries are there, and US could definitely support its own allies. So at this point, I think moving forward, what will happen? That's a $1 million question. How long this war will last? Who will win? Will it be US, Israel, who will be winning the war, or Iran? For Iran, that in itself is a victory if the regime change goal does not happen. The regime change goal is very tricky. Why I'm saying very tricky, the regime change goal? Because this is not a small country. It has a population of almost 91 million. So population with a country with a population of 91 million, the terrain is not that easy. It's not Ukraine that you have a flat terrain. It has its own terrain. So it won't be difficult. And with the kind of, the drones. So Iran has a huge stockpile of drones, and they're not very expensive as well. So can those drones be countered? Of course they can be countered, and US is countering that with Patriot missiles and so many other missile defense systems. But that comes at a massive price. And how long? Of course, the US President Donald Trump and the US administration, they met with the weapon manufacturers, and they are trying to increase the supply of weapons. But definitely the way Iran is retaliating with its own arsenal of drones, which don't come at a very heavy price. So it has been able to target a lot of important areas with precision. So that is a massive challenge. And then there's always a succession plan. It's not like you go to Venezuela and you take out Maduro and okay, fine, everything is done. You have your own person installed over there. No, the regime change would be difficult because Iran already knew that things could go wrong, because whether it was Iranian leadership or General Soleimani targeted in 2020 in Iraq, and that time the president was Donald Trump, or whether currently the leadership of Hamas or Hezbollah, they've been targeted there in Iran itself. So Iran already knew that things could go horribly wrong for their leadership. So they already have a very complex system of succession and leadership change. So the regime change would be difficult, especially taking this into consideration that US, will they be boots on the ground? So once you start sending troops on the ground, air power is strong. They have a lot of muscle as far as the air power is concerned. There's no two views about that. US and Israel continuously, they are firing from all cylinders. They're targeting. They've almost targeted around 175 plus different areas, different cities, different towns in Iran. 175 plus. Imagine how much of bombardment they've done in that area. Not only in Iran, but they've also made sure there's another war going on between Israel. There was already war in Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon because Israel wants to settle the scores against everyone. Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, Iran, everywhere. And the target is certainly not the thing that happened last year, a 12-day conflict in June 2025, that you're not just targeting the nuclear installations. And the implications are far-reaching. The consequences would be far-reaching. Even if I talk about Canada, what would Canada do in this position? Our Prime Minister Mark Carney, he was quick to support the attacks. When he was asked again, they backpedaled a little bit, the Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand. But then our Prime Minister Mark Carney was again asked in Australia, and that's the time he said, no, if I would tell you about the human rights challenges in Iran, this press conference would go on for a much longer time than anticipated. So Canada is standing behind US as far as the attacks is concerned. But are we going to enter the armed conflict? Our Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand clearly mentioned, we were not informed, we were not asked. So, but still, Canada may not be able to rule out joining the armed conflict, though it's going to be a stretch for us. Given the current situation, I doubt how much forces or how much support we can give to any sort of armed conflict in Iran. The challenge is equally important for many other countries. If we go to Pakistan, Pakistan has had a pact with Saudi Arabia, a pact where any country who would be attacked, it would be considered attack on the other country as well. So Saudi Arabia, there have been attacks on Saudi Arabia. So now will Pakistan join the conflict? Pakistan can condemn Israel, but as the situation is right now, there is no way Pakistan can condemn US. Because at this time, all the Pakistani regime or the military rulership cares right now, they want to keep former Prime Minister Imran Khan behind the bars, and they're being given legitimacy by none other than US as well. Okay, fine. They're not asking them any questions about Imran Khan or any of the human rights issues over there. Plus, Pakistan is having its own challenge. They are already at war with Taliban. As much as Pakistan is claiming that we have this many people have been decimated, we have taken over their checkpost, or there's heavy bombardment, but Taliban, you cannot. We've seen how Taliban fought against Soviet Union and then against the US forces, or even the Canadian forces for that matter. So I doubt Pakistan can really take over all of Afghanistan. Of course, they're targeting certain specific areas and they've got some sort of success, but then Taliban is also claiming. So Pakistan doesn't have much of a choice, but there's still, and there's around a 900-kilometer border which Pakistan has right next to Iran. So in case there is a strong Israeli regime over there, or a regime supported by US, I'm not sure whether that will be favorable for Pakistan. And Pakistan already has a challenge on one side of the border with India, then they're at war with Taliban. The only border towards the north, that's with the China, around 500 kilometers. That's the only border which is for now not a very volatile border. So what will Pakistan do? That's a bit of a challenge for them. Moving on to India. India also has its own challenges right now, because historically India and Iran, when they have very strong historical and cultural ties, even when it was Persia. So Persia, and you know what many people may not even know, at one time Iran and India, they had the borders next to each other. Yes, because historically India, or you Bharat, and you have Persia over here. So Bharat, or Hindustan, or Bharat, and then Persia, they were next door neighbors. There was no Pakistan. It was all under India, and even up until Kabul, Kandahar. So at that time, they had a strong history of cultural ties, trade ties between the Persian Empire and the Indian Empire. But then we all know 1947, there's a partition, and then Pakistan came along. But even India recognized Iran in 1950. They've had very strong ties with Iran ever since. Of course, there were issues with Iran when Iran would question how India treats its minorities. That's the only issue. But other than that, India has had strong ties with Iran. India would buy oil, 10%, 15%, or 20% of their oil would come from Iran. But after the sanctions, yes, there was challenge. India invested heavily in Chabahar port as well, because India wanted to counter China, because China invested heavily in Gwadar port in Balochistan. But for now, with the sanctions and everything, and the current issue, one of the ships of Iran that was targeted by US, though India would say, oh, it was approximately 250 nautical miles in the international waters, it was not there. But then the question still remain. Of course, it went after having joining joint exercises in India. Then there are two other ships, one docked in Sri Lanka, the other one India allowed to dock in India. So now approximately they're saying 183 sailors on that particular ship as well. But how long can India support that? There are various questions being asked on that. I heard India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also making comment on that. And then Indian Ocean, for that matter. India's External Affairs Minister is saying that the rise of India in the Indian Ocean, it is going to benefit everyone. But sticking on with this conflict, I would say, and there are a lot of protests happening, pro-war protest as well. It depends on who you ask, which side of the fence you are. There are many people who are supporting this war, that yes, the regime change was must. There are a lot of human rights abuses there in Iran. Then there are others who are against this war, and especially in Europe, in Middle East, in Canada, and some are against this war in US as well. They're saying we do not want to be dragged in this war. There's a conflict going on. It could be a long-lasting war, and it could impact not only the economy but so many other things. Because MAGA and US President Donald Trump campaigned that we will be stopping any sort of unnecessary wars. So from that perspective as well, there are a lot of questions that I'm sure US President Donald Trump has to answer. Then there are all sorts of conspiracy theories also. Why I would say conspiracy theories, because I do not have any proof for that. They could be true, but there are lots of theories also floating around. Is it because of economy? Is it because of the backlash in tariffs? Is it because of the Jeffrey Epstein files being coming around? What is the reason? There are questions of the timing of this war as well. But then I think the most, if I had to highlight the most important reason that I think on reasonable grounds, I would say that yes, somewhere, Israel had already realized China is busy with Ukraine. Yes, it can supply some logistical support, some intelligence support as well. But, Russia cannot directly enter the war now. It's overstretched there in Ukraine. China, if you ask me, and even before I say something about China, at one time I'd said this thing on my TV here and on radio as well, that Saudi Arabia, if there is a conflict between Israel versus Iran supported by US, Saudi Arabia will never support Iran. On the contrary, Saudi Arabia will say, okay, fine, go ahead. And there is a story in Washington Post. I don't know how far that's true, but Washington Post made similar allegations. So Saudi Arabia would say, okay, fine, that's okay. I mean, it's not that Saudi Arabia will stop. So right now, if you ask me, will China support Iran? I don't think so. They will give them military hardware or other support as well. They'll say, okay, fine, we'll buy some oil as well, more oil, okay, fine, that's okay. If there are any constraints, China, Russia, both will say, okay, fine, we'll support you. But they won't come directly in support of Iran. So what's the reason? China definitely knows when US, of course, they're going to take some sort of toll during this war. So Americans will not have an appetite for another war because there is already Russia versus Ukraine, then US is getting involved with so many things. So China will say, okay, wait and watch. By the time this war will end, China will come out more stronger, and maybe that is the time, in case China decides to take over Taiwan and there is some military conflict as well, there won't be much of an appetite for US. So this is working well for China as well. Okay, fine, exhaust your resources. US is going to their own manufacturers that bring us some more weaponry. So China will say, okay, exhaust your resources over there, and by the time this all is over. But let me tell you this one thing, we are witnessing a change in the economic system, in the supply chains, in the economy, in the energy system, and of course geographically as well. We would be witnessing a change once this war is over. How much time it takes, it's only anybody's guess, but we will keep you posted right here on Y Media platforms, whatever latest is happening, and present you some sort of analysis, the conflict that's going on in Middle East. Stay tuned with Y Media.
Y Media Group, the fastest growing media group in North America.